Major League Baseball players are arguing that they should get more money than the owners want to pay for a reduced season. Are they greedy or are they good businessmen? We'll dive down that rabbit hole. Major League Baseball and its players are now in a fight that may lead to no baseball this year because they can't agree on money. What a shock, huh? I mean, that's never happened before. But we have interesting times here, which raises interesting questions. Are the players who are fighting for their money being unreasonable and being greedy, or are they being smart because they're looking after their financial futures? Rick Zamprin, smart or greedy?
Absolutely 100% smart with a touch of greediness. I mean, these guys are throwing in all the risk. They're on the field. They're together. They're in the batter's box. They're sliding into second. They have all the risk in the game. All their eggs are in the basket, and the owners are just collecting the cash.
Bubs?
Well, I think to me, this is not so much just the players being greedy. I think it's the owners just being absolutely, trying to maximize because, they're trying to, I think, put the public in a sense of fearing the players in a sense that they're talking about they're afraid of a second wave of the coronavirus. I mean, they're almost trying to be sympathetic, like, look at us, we're trying to do the best thing here. And I think they're actually pitting the owners, the owners are pitting the players against the public. And I think really, to me, this is all about the owners. I mean, if you're a player, you're always going to try to maximize. You're the one that's not, at the short lifespan in terms of playing the sport. So to me, this is all about the owners just being absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion.
Steve?
Smart, but not in the way they intended. Of course, it's greedy, and of course, you try to get what you can. You never trust the owners. Years and years of history in this game have shown that in 1,000 different ways. Not that you can always trust the players, but what the players are sort of stumbled upon backhanded here, because it's not their motivation, is that the longer season is better for baseball. In other words, at least half for the integrity of the game, because it tells you that owners don't seem to understand what it is they sell. They know where they make their money, but not what they sell, and that is availability. It's the thing that separates baseball from other sports. The length of the season, it's always available, and not just a game, but your home team's game.
Here's why they're greedy, and it's pretty simple, I think, because right now you have got the players want to have 50% of the proceeds for half a season, but the owners are losing all the ticket sales, all the beer sales, all the hot dog sales, all the merchandise sales. Up to 40% of the revenue is gone by not having fans. And for the players to say, doesn't matter, we still get our 50% revenues, that kind of stuff makes no difference. That, to me, Rick, that's greedy, that's not realistic, that's overlooking a key part of this. It basically says fans don't matter.
I think the players' biggest bigaboo is that they agreed to a prorated deal with MLB back in, March or May, and the owners said, okay, let's go with it. And then all of a sudden the owners thought about that a little bit longer and said, wait a minute, if we do a sliding scale in which the Mike Trouts and Garrett Coles of the world, who make $36 million, will only make 22% of that as opposed to half of that, the owners thought, yeah, let's do that. And they've really screwed up the situation. They've thrown a screwball at baseball.
And the funny thing about that is I think really that was done out of a thought that, the whole C-19 situation was going to be a short-term thing. And it's obviously went much longer than any one of us ever expected. And now, as I said, I think the owners are trying to take advantage of the situation. I mean, just feasibility thoughts, guys. I mean, the thoughts of a 50-game season. So they're going to do, a dozen series, maybe a dozen 3-game series, and we're going to go straight to a playoffs. To me, this is all about money for the owners. They want to capitalize and get as much playoff revenue as possible. Hopefully, you might get fans in the stands by then, or at least a half or a third or a quarter of the fans in the stadium by then. But at the end of the day, the owners want the money from the national TV contracts. And this is all about that. Because I think the integrity of a 50-game series, if you ever have an opportunity to put an asterisk beside a season, it would be this year if that's what they get.
Who says that 40% is right? There's not one. See, we know that it's in the CFL when they talk about game day types of thing, because 3 of the teams have open books, right? So you can sort of prorate that to the privately owned teams. These are all privately owned. The owners have never shared their books. We don't know about that 40%. Bubba's right. It's usually back-ended, which is why they want more an extended playoff type of thing here. They're also heading to a whole revamping of the game with this, with the universal DH and with maybe an equal schedule between NL and AL in the East, or close to it, right? Like it'll be an unbalanced schedule still, but you could end up with a one division league over time, based geographically. All those kinds of things could be major changes in the game, and I think that you've got to really be careful about that. So I think the 40%, I wouldn't believe them at all about it. There's other sources of revenue that probably aren't included in that, including, streaming is just starting to come on board now, but streaming doesn't need fans, but it does need games. And also all of the things like online games, those kinds of things that are related to baseball and to the current season. I would severely doubt the 40% is real.
And look, I'm not holding the owners or the players to a 40% number. That was the number that was thrown out there. But you can't simply say that no fans and none of the ancillary money that comes from that goes away and it doesn't exist. So there are millions, tens, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars that are disappearing this year. And for the players to say, for the players to say, doesn't matter, that's yours to absorb, and we have no part of that, that to me is ridiculous. And so, surely Rick talks about the sliding scale with 22%. That's silly. But also to say we don't bear any of the responsibility or pain from the lack of fans and all those things is also silly by saying we just earn 50%. There's got to be some way that you can both come to some agreement and not both come across looking so darn greedy in this.
Well, I think the prorated is the way to go. If you're going to play a 50-game season, prorate the contracts on those 50 games. We also have to remember that these players are going to be in bubbles. They're not going to be with their families. They're not going to see their kids for a few months. They're going to be isolated from humanity, playing against each other in empty stadiums, getting tested all the time. If there's a positive test, the contact tracing has to come into effect. So it's not going to be, the luxury 5-star hotel that these players are used to staying at. They're going to be in bubble hotels. They're not going to be able to go to the pool. It's going to be quite rough for a Major League Baseball player.
Rick, hold on a second. Hold on. Quite rough. Okay,
see, so firmly in my
if I tell you, Rick, that you have to stay in a hotel and not with your family until September, and we'll pay you a couple $1 million to play.
Where do I sign up?
Thank you. That's exactly. So
I know it's not. Tell Mike Trout, who's expecting his first baby, to now go in a hotel and miss that and not be with his wife and only earn, $7 million as opposed to $36 million.
Did you just say only?
It's funny because
if your earning's 36, it's only 7.
It's funny because Blake Snell got called out, and I'll say this: I thought what he said was done in a very, I'll use this word loosely, in a kind of ghetto fashion. The way he sort of said, that all the risk is mine. But I think at the core, all the things he talked about, and I think I agree with you, Rick, that the risk. But the owners are sitting still in their mansions, watching the product roll out. It is the players. It is the fact that they were away from their families. It is them taking the risk every single day. And I know baseball is not a tremendous contact sport that maybe might spread the virus, but who knows? I'm not a doctor, but there is definitely an aspect of the risk all being the players. And I think to shortchange them of what I think their value really is, because I'm sorry, the players and the TV stations, they aren't paying to see the owners. They're seeing to see the game and the actual athletes themselves in competition.
Why do we always land on this? And look, everybody knows baseball players, entertainers, all make too much money relative to the way the world is. If the world was fair, they wouldn't. Doctors would make more, nurses would make more, teachers would make more. All of the people who help us, as we're seeing now on the front line, would make more. We never rip the owners for all the money they make and from their other businesses and all of those kinds of things. Secondarily, the owners are always throwing this stuff out in good times. We take the risk. So ultimately, here's where it comes. When they sell the teams, they make money off those teams, right? They never share it with the players. They don't say we want to share. We don't want to share the profits. They only say we want to share the risks. Risk, reward. The risk financially should be at the players or at the behest of at the feet of the owners most of the time, because they own. Now, there's got to be an element of cooperation here, or they're going to wreck the goose that laid the golden egg. They understand that. And the players should calm down in the type of rhetoric they say, because it sounds tone deaf in the time here now. But how come we never rip the owners for having money? How come we never do?
Steve, I think your point is fair that we need to have some sort of balance, but the idea that look at the rest of society right now. Tons of businesses have asked their employees or told their employees they're going to take less than 100% right now because we are in these weird times where things are different and revenues are way, way down. And so I'm not standing 100% on the side of the owners on this at all. But the players seem rather intransigent that says we must have half and we are going to ignore all the other things that are out there. My point is simply, it is inconceivable to me that in an industry that makes the billions of dollars that it does, that in an unbelievably unique time, when we're looking at everything that's going on in the world, that you two can't get together and say, for this year, we'll sign a contract that says this doesn't extend, this is for 1 year, that we will figure out some number between the two extremes and have a baseball season. If you can't do that, you're all nuts.
I think they will do that, but on principle, take a look at this. The San Diego Padres owner, let's just pick somebody, is going to own that team in 20 or 12 or 15 years. And so if this league gets to play through an agreement, that kind of thing, chances are they can recoup the lost money over those 10 to 15 years because they were able to play this season. Player's got 2 years left in his career, cannot.
Very true, and the owners owners and players have to look at the long-term implications of this year. If there is no season because they can't come to an agreement, that has long-term implications. We saw it in the strike of '94. It took the game a few years. It was the '98 home run battle between McGuire and Sosa to finally, rev up the engine of America's pastime. They're going to need that this year or next year if they don't play a season here in 2020 because they're bickering over money. It should be, whether it's 50%, 40%, 30%, I think all the players have to be treated equal. You can't nick the guys who are making 20 plus million because the owners signed them to these mega $1 million contracts. You're penalizing the player that you just signed.
You know what, guys? I keep hearing this doom and gloom thing, and I hear it a lot about sports, and I so disagree with it. I mean, if they don't sign a deal, the people are going to be upset. They're never going to forget it. They're not going to go to baseball games. Baloney. I've always said this. We put that fear into any type of labor issue, negotiations, things gone wrong, problems with the players, blaming the owners, and say, oh, next year, no one's going to show up. Baloney. Wait till the Blue Jays open up the season going 14-1. The place will be packed. The excitement will be still there. The TV stations will be promoting these teams. There will be some type of effect that we all have this negative feeling that richer owners and billionaire owners and players can't get together and get this done. But I'm telling you, once they solve it, we'll all be watching. Trust me, we all will.
Historically, Bubba, you're wrong. You're wrong.
What happened in '95?
Exactly.
In '95, it was only because of Sosa and McGuire that people came back. That people were.
It happened, didn't it? But it happened, didn't it?
It did.
I'm telling you, if the Blue Jays open up this season at 15-0, the Rogers Center will be packed. Trust me.
When they came back in '95, the Blue Jays did not open at 15-0.
I'm not saying they will. I'm saying, but
hang on. It took them 17 years to get the fans back, and they never got them all back. They only got back 3/4 of them. The number was killed the Expos. Took Kansas City 16
The Expos had different problems than this. The Expos had far different issues.
Whatever, that killed them. Though that was essentially the nail in the coffin, because they would have been in the World Series that year, right? And likely. And Kansas City took forever to come back. Milwaukee took little less time. There were about 4 or 5 teams, and it took new stadiums in a lot of places for all of this to happen. It wasn't just the home run thing. They built a whole bunch of new stadia as well. It took a lot for that to come back.
The longer this thing goes on without games, the more people will look to other things to get involved in, whether it's hobbies or other sports or other forms of entertainment, social media, YouTube, whatever the case is. Many of them will come back to the game or games or sports that they once loved, but some will be lost.
What do you think? Who do you agree with? Bubba? You agree with Bubba? You can send a response. Give us a comment down below. Do you agree with Steve? Do you agree with Rick? Who do you agree with? Let us know. Our Twitter handles are up on the screen. They'll be up again. We would love to hear from you. Follow us. Subscribe down below. We will talk to you soon.